Joining me now is the author of international bestsellers, including his latest on democracies and death cults, Douglas Murray. We will get to the US and UK shortly, but let's start in Australia, where one of our leading hospitals here in Melbourne, St Vincent's Hospitals, has introduced discriminatory practice with Indigenous patients fast-tracked in the emergency department over other patients. Hospital staff ordered to treat Indigenous patients within 30 minutes of arrival. What do you make of that policy, Douglas, where patients are seen not based purely on medical need?
It's extraordinary, Rita. I wish it wasn't. I wish it was surprising, but I'm afraid it isn't, is it? It's similar to practices that the so-called DEI and other movements have pushed for years, which is that somehow to make up for past inequities or inequalities, you have to introduce new inequities and inequalities. And if any group is regarded as having been disadvantaged in the past, you must disadvantage another group in the present. It's worth just calling it what it is, which is just flat out discrimination and bigotry. There's no other word for it. And in no other scenario would anyone tolerate this. I hope it's not tolerated in this case, but in no other way round would this be allowed. Would such discrimination in favor of one group of people and against another be deemed to be somehow progressive? It's as bigoted a policy as you can get, and I hope it's very swiftly consigned to history, as it should be.
I fear here in Melbourne, in Victoria, this is going to be a practice that's going to spread rather than be consigned to history. We've got a state-based race treaty and voice to Parliament being put into place at the moment. So we've got all sorts of problems, but so do New York.
But, you know, Rita,
Sorry, go on,
how long do the people who are pushing this policy honestly think that the rest of the population would put up with this? How long do they expect the rest of the population to just sit by in emergency wards and see other people prioritised because of their ethnic background? Just how long do they think the Australian public who aren't of so-called Indigenous heritage, how long do they think they're going to put up with this? Are the Australian public just a complete walkover?
Well, yesterday in the newspaper, there was a poll and 97% of respondents said they were against this policy. But I'm telling you, Douglas, I can't see it changing anytime soon. But New York residents, they're going to the polls next week and they're probably going to have a new mayor. Zoran Mamdani is expected to prevail. Let's hear from him.
I want to speak to the memory of my aunt, who stopped taking the subway after September 11th because she did not feel safe in her hijab.
Well, it wasn't so much his aunt as his dad's cousin, but, semantics. Douglas, is he ready to lead?
No, in absolutely no way is he ready to lead. And that was just another reminder of it. This is such a self-involved little narcissist with so little going for him, that he even decides to turn the memory of 9/11 and the 3,000 Americans murdered that day into a story about his aunt and the subway. It's interesting, like so many things that this smarmy candidate does, he makes it about himself and it all turns out to be untrue anyway. It seems to the extent that he had any such aunt in question, she wasn't in New York at the time, and in any case, didn't wear the headscarf. So it's an interesting one, New Yorkers. Within less than a quarter of a century of 9/11, do we allow things like the slaughter of 3,000 Americans by Islamic fundamentalists to be turned instead into a story of how this apparently fictitious, or at least partly fictitious, figure of his aunt might have once felt possibly as if someone might could look at her badly, nastily in the subway in the years after. This is just outrageous, and I'm afraid everyone in Europe who has seen candidates like Mamdani before knows exactly what's going on. He's trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. He's trying to smarm and smile his way into office. But this statement alone, if we didn't have any other evidence of his extremist views, would demonstrate the extremism of his views, because he's not able to focus on the things that actually have affected Americans, and instead wants to keep on creating, as so many radicals like him do, wants to create fictitious narratives about America and Americans being bigoted. And, Americans can't even be murdered by jihadists without people like Mamdani turning it into a fear of a pseudo-fictitious aunt of theirs once feeling sad about possibly being looked at meanly. I mean, this is just outrageous, and the umpteenth example and demonstration of why Mamdani should be nowhere near the mayoral office in New York.
Well, we had the mayoral debate finally. What do we learn there? Mamdani presents himself as this progressive champion of the poor. Is he at least that? Can the poor expect to get more affordable housing in New York City, for example?
No, I mean, he has no real plan for any of that. One of his few flagship policies is that he says that if he becomes mayor, he wants to make riding the bus in New York free. He was asked in this debate by the moderator. Finally, he got some sort of tricky questions. People actually drilled down behind the smile. And they said, there's this $700 million, I think it's expected to cost, this free bus ride thing. How are you going to pay for it, he was asked. And he replied by saying that if bus riding is made free, it will lower violence against bus drivers. It's not clear why that is. I mean, among other things, if anyone can just jump on a bus in New York, including all the homeless and the drug addicts and everything else without paying, I don't know why that makes life safer for anyone. But he also said that it meant that more people would ride the bus and therefore fewer people would get in their cars. I'm afraid that policy, or at least versions of that, have been tried elsewhere. What will happen is the buses will become more dangerous than they are, and as a result, many more people will use their cars than would have done. But he was then pushed again. Yes, but irrespective of potential violence against bus drivers in New York, how are you going to pay for it? And eventually, he said, through higher taxes. So great. He's such an economic whiz kid, this guy. He says he's going to give New Yorkers free bus rides, but they're going to have to pay for it in higher taxes. That's the kind of thing that socialists like him always argue for. They take more and more money away from the public. They make the public poorer and poorer, but they dangle little baubles, like every now and then you can get a free bus ride on a more dangerous bus. It's brilliant, isn't it?
Yes, it's going to be scary to think what New York's going to look like in 2 or 3 years' time under a hard left socialist Mamdani administration. Let's go to the UK now, and we've spoken about the flag protests there. Operation Raise the Colours, supposed to represent patriotism and pride in Britain, but not everybody is on board. Let's hear from Labor MP Jivan Santer, who is calling on Brits to take down their flags because it's making some people feel uncomfortable.
And then I see flags painted on roundabouts, and that is just a bit weird. And you know, because you've seen it online and I see it in my inbox, that this does make people feel uneasy. And they ask, what message are these flags supposed to be sending?
Douglas, what does it say about a nation if the national flag fills people with angst and makes them feel uneasy, or you've got an MP there saying it's a bit weird?
Yeah, there's nothing weird about it at all. If he travelled to any other nation or country, he'd probably find that the flag of that nation was flying in that country. It's just a reminder of what a pushover people think that Britain is these days. I mean, try it with any other country, Rita, and maybe this guy can. Maybe you can go to any other country and say, you know what, you flying your national flag makes me feel uncomfortable, and just see how much care anyone gives to such a statement. The fact is that somebody like him can even say this is a reminder of the tolerance and decency of the British people. Some people might say the over tolerance and the over decency of the British people. Because if the British people weren't tolerant and decent, then people like this gentleman wouldn't be having the lives and careers that they are having, and they wouldn't have the ability to complain that the country they're in, when the flag is flown, makes them feel uneasy. It's just, again, this just unbelievable bigotry against the most tolerant nations in the world, be it Australia, be it Britain. It's always the same pattern. It's the countries that are the most tolerant, the most respecting of difference, and much more, that end up being taken advantage of by buffoons like this.
I mean, can you just imagine going to a country in the Middle East and wanting to reside there and telling them to take down their flags? It's making you feel a little bit uncomfortable. I mean, it is just, like you said, astonishing behaviour. Now to an incredible story from the Telegraph, today's Telegraph, revealing that an activist accused of targeting an RAF base with Palestine Action has been leading anti-Israel protests from behind bars. Mohammed Umar Khalid had been using a prison phone to lead the protests in what has been described as yet another security farce. Douglas, that just seems astonishing.
Would that it was astonishing in modern Britain. We've just had the case this week of a man who came to the UK illegally, immediately started molesting schoolgirls, was detained, and then accidentally released. And he actually returned to the place he'd been released from, asking to be let back into the prison and to be deported. And he kept being sent back by the authorities. He said, no, 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 chum, on your way, go back out, have at it. And that's just, the last 24 hours. So every day in this calamitously badly run modern Britain, we have cases like this. Yes, every now and then they will catch somebody who's an illegal migrant, and they'll let them back out, or they'll let them back out, swap them with somebody in France, and they then come back in again. Or in this case, you finally actually do detain somebody who's involved in terrorist violence against an RAF base. But it turns out that he can conceal a phone in prison or whatever, and guide the operations from outside. It's just another reminder that under the Labour Party in Britain, it's just a fundamentally unserious system, a totally broken system. And just everybody in Britain has to hope that at some point quite soon, this is turned around. But I mean, you read stories like this, Rita, just every day in the British press. And, who's in charge of this stuff? Geniuses like David Lammy.
Douglas, before you go, the world celebrated the Gaza peace deal not too long ago. We noted many of those free Palestinian types didn't seem to be celebrating. Let's hear from one of them, Irish actress and pro-Palestinian activist Denise Gough.
Well, ceasefire isn't liberation, ceasefire isn't free Palestine, and also it feels that it was made without any Palestinian voices, but also that it meets the terms of a true free Palestine and an end to the occupation.
There you go, Douglas. So we've been told the actress also accused Israel of gaslighting the world about what's happening in Gaza.
Yes, she strikes me, Rita, as not being the brain of Britain or indeed of Ireland. I don't know if you get that sense as well. You can see her sort of struggling for the next thought. It almost is written across her forehead as she does that. She says that there don't seem to be any Palestinian voices in the discussion. That's very strange, isn't it? because, of course, among other things, a rather strong Palestinian voice, the remaining leadership of Hamas, were absolutely central to the negotiations. Palestinian voices is presumably something she's just sort of heard talked about at some poetry jam in a theatre somewhere in North London, where she's attended a solidarity evening at some point. And she probably can't point to any of the places in question on a map, but she's heard things like, we must prioritize Palestinian voices. And actually, when Palestinian voices make themselves very loudly heard, whether on October the 7th with their rape-a-thon and murder-a-thon, or indeed in the recent negotiations, it seems that this dimwit just doesn't hear them. So perhaps it's not a lack of Palestinian voices, it's a lack of her being able to hear anything she doesn't want to hear. But as I say, I think it's very unlikely that this actress actually is over the complete issues of phases 1, 2, and 3 of the ceasefire negotiation. I don't know, Rita. I'd love you to ask her on and grill her on the real fine points of the peace plan. I'd pay good money to watch that.
You know what? We will reach out to her people and extend the invitation. She has been to Gaza, so perhaps she has something to contribute, but I'm not going to hold my breath, Douglas Murray. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Great pleasure as always. Thank you.